Howdy y'all. So, here on out, you'll see that I pretty much have like two different kinds of AUs. One where the storyline itself changes, and another one where it's only like the aesthetic of the world or the designs change. In this case, it's only the designs. Just an AU that's specifically for the case of changing the design. So design changes can occur in storyline AUs. Design AUs massively focus on changing how everything looks. So this one, it's a fancy theme, just the characters up real fancy. And finding references for this was hard, and drawing dresses and stuff is hard. Just look up dress. You'll find the most boring selection of plain clothing ever. Ever. It's so uncreative, and it hurt my artistic soul. As per usual, we're going from A to Z, alphabetical order. The first one up is the director, and the director was quite difficult. In the director's original design, he's already wearing a tuxedo and just looking fancy in general, so it was hard to spice him up a little bit. So I actually, for a lot of these designs, I used the Danganronpa 10th anniversary drawing, because that had some really cool and unique dresses, give the program modern day fashion. I saw something similar to this scarf thing on a character, and I thought that looked really cool, so, I added it. He originally had like a cape, but that was a bit too over the top. Dmitri being Russian, I decided to run along with the Russian style. So obviously, first thing that came to mind was one of those little Russian hats, so, I drew that on him, obviously. So I examined the typical fashion in Russia, and it seems that these really long coats are a trend. Sorry for there's construction going on. So I added that over on top of a tuxedo. Tried to add shades of blue for touches of color, since he's probably the most colorless character on Entry Point, looks-wise. Black and white wear, gray text. Falcon. With Falcon, I was somewhat aiming for, the kind of, sort of butlerly look. Mostly with the gloves and the long tuxedo in the back. Because he looks adorable, and he looks really good in purple and red. And Rose and the Freelancer both tend to have, claimed red already, so I usually go with the purple look when it comes to Falcon. I also kind of went for the butlerly look because it kind of somewhat embodies that he serves Halcyon, even though he doesn't really want to. The Freelancer. So, red is just kind of like the typical main character color, so that's what I went with for them. And also playing off the theme of how in their original design that I created for them, they got a little rose, and it was a remembrance to, Rose. So I decided to play on that theme a little bit more, make it floral, gave him a rose flower crown. But yeah, their theme was pretty much red roses. Harvey here is similar to his original design, him trying to call himself classy and pretty much a half-hearted attempt to look classy. He's not very extravagant, so I just went with brownish colors, some yellow, along with a loose scarf that's kind of just dangling there because he does not care. And a fedora, because why not? It added flair. Hemlock may act like a bean, we think, but he looks like a badass, so I wanted a tuxedo that equally matched that. So I sort of gave him a short sleeve jacket, because, I don't know, it looked cool. Kind of gave off the sense of a rebellious badass, like a kid who just rolls his sleeves up on a fancy shirt during school. That was pretty much my only idea with Hemlock. Jackdaw was fun to play around with because, he's a very messy, rugged guy. Fancy is pretty much the opposite of what he is, so similar to Harvey, it's sort of he still looks good, but in a rugged way. He's fancy but rugged still. And he's not really wearing his jacket, it's just hanging around his shoulders, and come on, his hair is wild, there was no way to tame it. The best thing we could do with it was pull it back into a ponytail, which I love. I love ponytails on men, they look good. Jade was one of the more harder ones, because unlike some of these designs, I didn't really have an image of what I wanted to do with her at all. In fact, I'd say she's probably the one I struggled with the most. How did I make this bitch fancy without making her look, a little bit too fancy? She still needs some touch of badassery to her. So first I thought of the fluffy things, which I think are called boos or something, or boofs, and built off that. I also thought of Leopard Prints, which I actually really like the idea, because Leopard Prints can both be badass and also really fancy, so it could be spun both ways. Even if just that, it looked plain, so I added some rings and earrings too. Angel said this kind of had an African look, and at first I didn't know what he was talking about, but looking back on it, I can definitely see where he was coming from. Not my intention, but it looks cool. Nightshade's design I really like, so I based her off of feathers at first, and, sort of like a peacock, a pretty golden peacock. The moment I thought of the idea of feathers sticking out the back, I loved it, so I played off of that. Gave her some feathers and some thrill, because apparently a large amount of the Entry Point community actually headcanoned her to be French-Canadian, which I thought that's very specific until I did some research and found out French Canadians are very common in Canada. Either way, I didn't really see it, but I decided to feed into that headcanon a little bit anyways by, kind of giving it like sort of the French touch with the frill and the gold. Rivera, the queen, was the very first design I finished, and it was somewhat of a journey getting there. I recycled through a bunch of ideas with her until I finally ended up on this one, and I like it. Like the Queen of Jewels or something. She's got a lot of her dress is definitely like gemstone-y themed. She's a green queen gemstone machine. Rose I also had a little trouble with. I wanted her hair tied up in some sort of way. I imagined her dress to be a little bit more defined than this when I first started drawing it, but it ended up becoming like really flowy, which was not the intention, but I ran with it. And also, once again, throwing in some roses in there. Because it's Rose, quite literally Rose. So, of course, we needed some roses, as well to spice up the look a little bit. And I did think it looked a little plain at first, but there was literally nothing else I could add without making it look like it was too much, so... And it ends up looking okay anyway, so... It still looks good. I like it. I like how it turned out. It surprised me. Ryan Ross is the same case as the director. He's already pretty fancy looking. So, I decided to take a little spin on it. With Ryan, he's more about, like, being really modern, so it was sort of a little bit of tad out of character to decide to take on a little goldish twist to it, but it looks okay. It was originally a lot more golder, but after I finished Nightshade's design, I realized that both of their colors were really similar, so I made Ryan Ross's a paler yellow instead, which I actually I liked a lot. I liked it a lot more than the other one. The gold one was really crappy looking, a little bit too flashy looking, and Ryan Ross, he's modern, but not 100% flashy. Sparrow's design I fought with a little bit at first, but the moment I figured out what I wanted to do with her, her design naturally came together. At first I wanted to do something like a little floral theme, but she ended up it came off of a really Hawaiian look and not really the thing I was going for, and I didn't really like it. The only other idea I had was stars, because she had a little star bracelet, she's from the army, and she quite literally flies along the stars as a pilot, so... Plus, she looked really good in it. So, with all three things taken into consideration, stars was figured would be really fitting. And I definitely wanted, not really like the downward dress like most other girls have here. Wanted to be a little bit more poofy. It's like her skirt's a little bit more like bowl-shaped than compared to the rest of the dresses. I think she looks absolutely adorable. Okay, I take that back about Rivera. She was the first dress. Ren was the first design out of them all. And in fact, the reason what inspired this whole thing was that, like, a year ago almost now, I played a night heist mission with Angel, and one of his characters, he was being Ren. And Ren looked really, really good with a suit. So that's where I came up with the idea of this whole thing. And so, I designed his own suit. Ren, which, man, I really like the floral theme of a lot of these characters. He just, in the main storyline, it just doesn't really show a lot of what his character actually is. Like, he pretty much just kills a freelancer in the canon. That's about the only thing he does. It doesn't show his charming side, his manipulative side, how I imagine being very handsome, a very, very handsome character, he would use that to his advantage, stealing the hearts of people so he can use them. So I like to say the tuxedo kind of touches into that side a little bit. I think it looks great, but compared to the other designs, probably a little bit flat. And that is all of the designs, and take a look at this big drawing of all the characters at a big fancy party thing afterwards that I made after I finished all the designs. And I really like it. It turned out really well. I liked all the designs a lot. I'm really happy I finally finished this, because I've had this in my mind for like almost a year now, and I have not finished it until like a few days ago. Sorry, I know I stumbled on my words and said a lot, but I wasn't reading off as a script. I don't usually do scripts when it comes to Fanon things. I think a lot more than I talk, so it's not easy to talk on a whim. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. See y'all.